You can't magically become a great pilot without spending the time training, but there are at least 6 things that will improve your flying and make you a safer pilot immediately with no additional training required. What's up everyone, I'm a private pilot and aviation enthusiast and this is Let's Go Aviate. Number 1 is a subject I occasionally see being debated online and at the local pilot pubs, which creates less drag in the event of an engine failure, a windmilling or stationary propeller. The correct answer in the case of a fixed pitch propeller, of course, is a stationary propeller creates less drag. This isn't something I remember being taught in flight school, but the POH of the aircraft I trained to fly in stated that in the event of an engine failure, stopping the propeller from windmilling will improve glide performance, which is where I first came across this subject. While this info isn't likely to be useful in the case of an engine failure after takeoff, it might be very useful in the case of an engine failure in cruise. Provided that the engine isn't producing any thrust, stopping the propeller from windmilling will improve glide performance, which could improve landing options and may even save your life. There is one catch though. On piston engines with a low compression ratio, you might not be able to stop the propeller from windmilling.
Maybe, I don't know.
The second thing I wish I knew as a low hour pilot is one way to drastically improve your landings while lowering risk is to approach at the correct airspeed. Seems obvious, but I see way too many bounce landings and runway overruns which could easily have been prevented. Other than for accidental downwind landings, most often this happens because of pilots approaching too fast. The correct approach speed is called VREF or Reference Final Approach Speed. To calculate VREF for any light aircraft, use the stall speed in landing configuration multiplied by 1.3. Approaching at this speed on short finals significantly reduces the possibility of a bounce landing or running out of runway due to excessive floating. Number 3 on the list is downhill downwind versus uphill upwind takeoffs.
I'm confused.
Yeah, I'm confused too. We're confused.
I occasionally come across pilots asking when a downhill downwind takeoff will be the safer option. And while there is no quick answer, there is a phrase I learned a long time ago that goes, downhill beats downwind. If ever in doubt, that downhill and downwind takeoff might just be the safer option depending on the wind strength and the terrain slope. And the fourth thing I wish I was taught as a low hour pilot is called DMMS or Defined Minimum Maneuvering Speed. DMMS is a minimum speed at which fixed wing aircraft can be maneuvered, for example in the event of an engine failure, without fear of stalling or accelerated stalls. I even recently made a video specifically about this where I tested the limits of DMMS for myself. I was able to bank close to 60 degrees, trying to maintain altitude without stalling. But since a 60-degree bank is right on the edge of an accelerated stall, limiting banks to 45 degrees or better yet 30 degrees leaves a lot of margin for error, and it will not be possible for you to stall your airplane provided you respect the DMMS speed. And to calculate your aircraft's DMMS, simply use the clean stall speed multiplied by 1.404. If you're enjoying this video so far, please consider subscribing as it really helps me to grow this channel. The fifth thing I wish I knew as a low hour pilot was more certainty around my stance on the impossible turn debate. Lately, a lot of pilots have come forth saying the impossible turn is in fact possible. I personally know pilots who have successfully done an impossible turn, suffering an engine failure after takeoff and landing back on the runway. So I guess the impossible turn isn't impossible after all. But there are a couple of things that is very important to take note of. These pilots that have had success with the impossible turn are almost always very experienced pilots that are very proficient in their aircraft. Secondly, pilots that have had success with the impossible turn have usually done it in high performance aircraft. Either high horsepower stall type planes or faster planes with enough power to gain sufficient height before going too far from the runway. Even if your situation checks both these boxes, I still suggest not attempting the impossible turn after suffering an engine failure after takeoff, but landing straight ahead. And if you don't meet the criteria, the impossible turn should not be an option in your mind. It is called the impossible turn to deter us from giving the thought the time of day. And rightly so. Keep in mind the chances of surviving a head-on crash into obstacles is much higher than stalling your aircraft and falling. The last thing on the list I wish everybody knew, since being a low-hour pilot, is the priority order of pilot tasks, especially important in emergencies. You may have heard the phrase aviate, navigate, communicate, but do you understand it? It is senseless to want to communicate in an emergency, like an engine failure for example, without first knowing where you are and where you are headed. Similarly, it is pointless to try to navigate somewhere like an airport or field if you don't have the airplane under control. Hence, aviate first, then navigate, and lastly, communicate. I frequently come across airplane accidents on forums where armchair investigators berate pilots for not making mayday calls or choosing the perfect field to land after an engine failure. While it would be ideal to follow the communication and emergency procedures to a T, it would be tragic stalling an aircraft while trying to make the perfect mayday call, or trying to navigate to the perfect landing spot, and in doing so losing focus of maintaining best light speed and as a result not reaching the landing site at all. There is a reason the phrase aviate, navigate, communicate exists. Most important always is to fly the plane or aviate. When the plane is under positive control, only then is the next most important task to navigate, which is knowing where you are and where you are going. And when that is sufficient, only then is the most important task to communicate. If you found this video interesting, you will definitely enjoy this one on 5 skills that makes any pilot better.